I'll have to accept that you're recording. Okay, so the disclaimer is we are not claiming to be the masters of the universe when it comes to this stuff, or that anything I say will be the end all be all. I do think there is lots of great information in what I'm about to say. Take it with a grain of salt. Continue to do your research. Continue to study. Go to acting class. Read books. Watch and listen to interviews with actors and writers and directors and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. I just saw the comment about volume being low. Can you hear me okay, Laura?
I just responded. Mine seems normal. If you guys,
Okay.
maybe a couple of others can chat.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. Yeah. So again, don't hear us saying, don't hear me saying anything from a point of arrogance, just from a point of trying to share information and pass it along. So I will overlook things, I will miss things, I apologize, but I think if you take notes and if you listen and you try to apply it, there's going to be a lot of great information here. So second thing I want to say is that I actually probably should have titled this mini workshop differently. Laura titled it what I said to title it, but honestly, it's more breaking down the scene versus total script analysis. Now, some people would say that that's all you need to do as an actor, even as a lead or strong support, even as a character that comes back in multiple scenes. Some people would say, well, really all you need to do is analyze and play the scene bit by bit. You don't need to necessarily look at an entire arc. That's the job of the editor and the director, because as a human, we don't know the end. When we get a script, we know the beginning and middle and end. But as a human, we only know what has happened just before. We know goals and ideas of where we want to go, our objectives, right? But we don't know how it's going to end. So some people would say that you don't even really need to analyze the entire script and worry about arc. And I would say there's some truth to that. I think you can do a really darn good job if you really know what's sitting right in front of you and answer all those important questions. So anyway, this is really more about breaking down scenes versus breaking down an entire script if you're like a lead or if you're a recurring character or appear multiple times. I'm going to start off a little bit more simple and get more complicated. I'm going to challenge y'all to do this. I was reminded of this technique recently. When you first get a script, a lot of times we want to dive right in. I know I do. I want to dive right into kind of analyzing it and breaking it down and figuring it out. But I think, and you do have to do that. I think that is the correct course of action to take to act the scene well. But I think at first, if we don't play around with it and have a little fun with it and just kind of see what happens instinctually, we might start eliminating opportunities immediately because that's how our brain works. We compartmentalize and we assess and we're like, this is this and it's not this. So just try this out when you get a script next time. Rather than starting to analyze immediately, you are going to analyze. Rather than analyze immediately, start reading it out loud. Just start saying it out. Just start saying it. Don't try to get it right. Just start saying it. And if you have a home setup, where you do auditions and stuff, record it and just say the words out loud. Even if you have a reader, great. You can workshop it and just play around and just do it. Even when you're reading it before memorization. But even if you don't have a reader, you can just go through your lines, record it several times and then watch playback. Because I think there's something to just playing with it at first and seeing if there are some instincts there that you might utilize that may even be wrong, or after you analyze, they may be in the less right path. It's kind of like a table read, but just a little even less focused than the table read. It's just saying the words and see what happens. Anyway, it's just a little exercise. It doesn't take a long time, and that's just one little thing you can do at the beginning before you start saying this is right and this is wrong. I'm sure you've all heard, again, I said I'm going to start off more simple and get more complicated. Acting is reacting. So on the most basic level, if you just know your words, you observe, connect, and react. There you go. I think you need, to be a good professional actor. If you think about all the actors that you were amazed by and you think the performance is fantastic, they do much more than that. But just at a basic level, that's what we got going on. And of course, the old saying, living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. That's great, but how? The two key tenets and I'm going to get into scene analysis, trust me, more in just a second. The two tenets, the most basic, if you don't have time to do anything else, it's where are you coming from and what is the other person giving you, right? What's going, those two things collide. That's the real basics of any scene. So if you don't have much time, you know, kind of doing a cold read scenario, quick breakdown of what's going on, where you're coming from, and what's going on with the other person, and then just fly with it. Okay. How you break that down even more? Your who, what, when, where, and why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And therefore, what is the behavior going on there? Who, and I'm gonna dive into these in more detail in just a moment. Who are the other people in the scene, and what do they mean to me? And what is the behavior associated with that person? So, you know, the why might have a certain behavior. You're there to get help and you're frantic, but the who might be a calming presence, right? Or it might be a presence that makes things even worse. So there's the dichotomy of those behaviors that can match there. Then the what is the situation, the relationship, and then what are the consequences as well. So I think, again, at some level, most everyone addresses most of those things, and either consciously or subconsciously. Even if they have more of a gut instinct, they just kind of have a more reactive thing. Subconsciously, they're quickly analyzing those things and getting into a vibe or whatever, even if they don't break it down more intellectually. Laura, before I get, and now I'm going to start digging into really real more specifics. And just kind of a general overview, did you have anything to kind of add or speak into that before? Because I'm going to get much more specific. Okay, great.
So the only thing I'll piggyback on is that disclaimer that no, we don't ever present these because we feel like they are the end all. But I think it's really important. Even the Bible says that there's wisdom in much counsel. And I think that even if you are training with somebody that you think is the most incredible, powerful, wonderful, knowledgeable person in the industry, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're only learning from that one person. So I love that you give that disclaimer at the beginning, because we're just two people, you know, but sometimes you and I differ a little bit on things. And that's great, because this industry is packed full of different people, and the more folks you learn from and interact with, the better broad knowledge you get. So thank you for bringing your corner of wisdom to us today.
Yeah. And it's funny is when I first started, I honestly didn't even realize that, because I only went to this one acting class, and it was great acting class, but I didn't realize how many methodologies there were, how many different approaches there were. And I get on set and talk to people, and I don't even understand. What do you say? How do you do it if you don't do it my way? And you don't want like a chip on your shoulder. You don't want a disdain for the way other people do it. Again, some people are going to really latch on to some of the things I'm going to say and say, yes, that's the thing. And then the other thing, they're going to be like, oh, that's garbage. You don't need that. That's, but my next statement was going to be, ultimately what matters is in the frame. So you can do a lot of work, you can do a lot of homework, and sometimes we like to celebrate and elevate and idolize these celebrities and actors and do all these crazy things, right? And I'm not saying that sometimes the things they do, the extreme measures, don't help out what's on screen, but I don't think that they're always necessary for everyone. I think sometimes, you know, they joke about like Leo eating the buffalo liver or whatever. That's what he had to do to finally get his nomination and his win. So yeah, there's a lot you can do. For instance, backstory. I'm sure a lot of you know what backstory is, and we'll get in that a little bit. You can create books, volumes of backstory, which is a fun creative exercise. But if it ultimately doesn't motivate you and inspire you to say the words with meaning and connection and interaction in a truthful, again, inspired way, then you just did a bunch of homework that didn't really necessarily help. So there is a lot you can do. There's a lot to do, and I think a lot you should do. But keep in mind that there's a lot of intellectual breakdown. But if you don't connect it if it doesn't connect to the heart or the gut, if you don't truly connect with it in a way that just drives you to want to say these words or connect with this person, then you're just doing a bunch of intellectual stuff that is just busy work ultimately. And And a lot of this, so much of this is another reason why the different training and different backgrounds and different script analysis matters, is because you're all different. Every one of us is different. So I can't tell you what you connect to as you're making your own assessments and your own connections. We might all have like a hypothetical general, as if we're saying that A plus B should equal C, emotionally or psychologically. But if that doesn't work for you, then you can't ham fist that. You can't make yourself. You got to figure out what makes you tick and what you connect to, and utilize that. I'll get to that more in just a second. So, if you're taking notes, circumstances. All right, that's a lot of the kind of what's going on situation. You have to identify the given circumstances in a scene. I mean, literally, what's going on in the scene? Are you in a car driving? Are you hanging off the side of a cliff? Just what's going on? And are you in the middle of a battlefield? Everything that just is happening, you need to know what's happening. And I would say you take that, you keep digging with that too, even so much as when and what part of the, are you in a freezing cold cave that's dripping with water in the pitch black? Because you might communicate different there. Are you in a nightclub where the music is really loud? Because you're gonna interact different there. Are you in a library? What time period are you in? Because that can potentially affect how you communicate with different individuals. You really need to be a detective with this stuff, because sometimes, especially again, if y'all are auditioning and the breakdown world and the auditioning world, you get varying levels of information. So sometimes you'll get a lot of information as to the what's going on with you and the other people and the situation, circumstances, and the relationships. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get very little information, and you just have to extrapolate as much as you possibly can from your side or from the information you're given. So again, that can just be a little hint, so that specifically your self-tape auditions can be better. Because remember, what they're looking for a lot of times, and Laura can speak to this in just a second. From what I understand and what I'm hearing, they want to see a performance on your self-tape that's as close as possible to just being able to pick you up out of that self-tape and drop you on set. So if you go back to that example of like, if you're in a room that's full of really loud music, if you kind of communicate like that in your scene, as if this really, that helps them suspend disbelief and say, oh yeah, they know exactly what's going on. Boop, we're just going to pick them up out of that self-tape and drop them into the scene. Laura, have you heard the same thing? Do you agree? Are you looking for that same thing, or not?
So personally, yes, because I love when actors are directable, but I love to not anticipate having to redirect them too much. So I've been listening to Beverly Holloway, who's one of the most renowned faith-based casting directors. She is also doing a lot more instructing and Q&A. If you guys have not caught it on Facebook, she goes live every Tuesday night now to answer your questions. Something that surprised me is that she is willing to actually watch 2 different takes. Now, they must be boldly different. And that was the first time that I've heard that would actually be something they're interested in seeing. But like you said, these need to be bold choices that make sense within the script. They stay authentic to any and all information that has been given. But if you have a totally different choice, don't ever submit 2 similar takes. But that if you have maybe an idea for this crazy, like, I'm going to go big and bold, but it could be wrong, and maybe I'll play it safe. So she said, hey, submit both takes. That was new to me. And I said, hey, that's great. And I would actually love to see that as well when people submit to me. But yes, I mean, it's got to be truthful. I want to already believe that your character is who I'm looking for already for this story.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with, and again, Laura, you can correct me or not, but from what I understand, they're so busy. There's so much going on. They have a lot of roles to cast, a lot of tapes to watch, and all this. They simply don't have the time or resources to, especially when you have so many submitting. If you got 300 submitting and there's a handful that have done really well, and they're like, yeah, that's almost exactly what I need. I just drop them in the scene. And then you come along and you haven't tried to honor the intention of this kind of stuff like we're talking about, then they're just going to go with someone who already turned in a strong audition that already gets it all, rather than saying, they have a lot of potential. I'm going to reach out to them, have them retape with some redirection. You may get it, but you're rolling the dice there. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So analyze those given circumstances. Next up, the relationships. So obviously the relationships, don't give them an easy reason to cut you. Yeah. The relationship with the other characters in the scene. But anyone that's even mentioned or referred to, you have to address. You have to establish what that relationship is for you. So the person I'm in the scene with, person I'm speaking about that's not there, the person they're speaking about that's not there, even if it's a reference to a they or a them or a group or what, who's being talked about. How do you feel about them? Do you know them at all? Is there any relationship? Be specific. And again, when you don't have information available to you, make choices. I think making a specific choice that matters to you is better than making a not choice. Because if it's wrong, at least someone can say, well, they had something there, something's going on, they cared. It may have cared about it in the wrong way, but at least they had something going on, versus just referring to Paul and there being nothing, just a deadness behind your eyes. You know what I'm saying? So make choices, make specific choices, even if they're not quote unquote right.
On that note, what's going to differentiate your tape from everybody else just reading the lines in a very safe way? If you are making those bold choices, that's going to possibly will be what separates your tape, even if it's not quite right, like you said, because everyone else is reading the lines as people would anticipate the lines should be read. So yes, you don't want to stray too far from that. Authenticity, of course, is the name of the game. However, those bold choices sometimes are the ones that make people sit back and go, you know what? I hadn't seen the character in that way, but that works. So always get creative and understand what your initial take is on the character and their persona, and then think outside of the box as well and go, is there any other way that this character could operate truthfully, and give that a shot. That's my only take on that.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing, I'm just kind of moving along, lots of bullet points here. And anytime you have questions, type them into the chat, and Laura's going to help regulate all those at the end, or you can hold till the end. But if one pops up, you can go ahead and throw it in there, and she can what's the word? Not monitor, but whatever. You're as the host.
The moderator.
Moderator. There's the word. It's getting old. Can't figure out the right word to use. Okay. So title the scene. That's the one thing I like to do, is title the scene. Is it an interrogation scene? Is it a breakup scene? What's the overwhelming theme? And then you hurt me. Whatever it is, just a couple words. That's just something I can kind of always go back to as a reminder if I'm getting lost in the minutia or whatever. Like, okay, ultimately this is an interrogation scene. I'm questioning. I'm trying to get an answer out of this person, or I'm accusing, or I'm retreating, or whatever. I mean, that gets into objective and tactics, and we'll get into that too. But just kind of something I connect to that's a title of the scene. That'll also help you in communication with the director or casting director, because if you're way off and you're communicating in that kind of way, like, well, this is, to me, this is more of an interrogation scene. They can say, oh, whoa, no, well, I see what you're doing there, but this is not an interrogation scene. It's more like a blah, blah, blah scene. So it can help get to the heart of what's going on there too. You have your moment before that you have to address. So you got your specific moment before, the events leading up to this moment in the scene. Okay. If you don't know that, make some choices, because again, going back to like self-tape auditions, they want it to look like they're just kind of clicking through, turning channels, then just stop on yours, right? The beginning is not the beginning. Even if it's the beginning of an interaction, it's the beginning of life. There's something going on. Even if it's you're walking up and saying, hey, and you're starting a conversation with someone, why? What has motivated you to come up and do that? Did you just get some information, or did you make the decision to do it, or whatever? So you've got the moment before the actual, like, what happened in the script before, which you may or may not know. If you don't know, you decide something that fits and makes sense and you connect to. And then you have like the what they call a lot of times the emotional pre-life. So what state, whatever you've decided, did you just get a call that provided you with new information. So now you're going to talk to that person. Okay, there's that, and then there's the state of being at the top of that scene too. So now what are you going into this next scene with? Are you anxious? Or are you excited to share? And again, this kind of will go into objective and tactics. We'll get in just a moment, but you need to have that at the very, 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 very top. And there's different ways in terms of you can listen to music, you can do, there's physical things you can do, there's breathing techniques you can do, you can ad lib and talk or improv at the top of the scene to get you in that state. There's a lot of things you can do, but at the very top of the scene, you want to be already in it. That doesn't mean you have to be crazy worked up. Maybe you are super calm at the top, super calm at the top of the scene, and then something gets you upset. But whatever it is, there needs to be something. Performance, energy. I see someone say, yeah, sure. Yeah. You can call it lots of things, but you can't just be dead until even your first line. There's gotta be something going on from the very top. Even if that's contemplation, if you're considering what you're gonna say, not what are my lines, considering it as the character. I was talking about this with another class last night. You think about a lot of great actors, Denzel Washington and Christian Bale and Viola Davis and Russell Crowe and Daniel Day-Lewis and Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio, and I mean you could go on and on. A lot of them, they think on camera, and it's mesmerizing. It draws you in, but they're thinking as the character. They're not thinking, "Oh, how do I look?" or "Oh, I'm about to make this face," or what are my next lines? They're considering as the character. Anyway, that was just a little side note. All right, so we got our moment before. Next, we get into a lot of people really like dealing with objectives and tactics. Some people don't like it as much, but I do think they are helpful, and they're helpful reminders, and they're kind of like tactile, something you can grab onto and you can apply. Whereas sometimes the other stuff can seem more mystical and vague and harder to connect to. Your objective is, what do you want? What do you all want in the scene? Okay. And you can kind of break that down to different characters too. Sometimes you want kind of slightly different things from different characters if there's multiple people in the scene or multiple people being referred to. But the objective is, what do you want? What were you saying, Laura? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say it kind of reminds me of like the volleyball thing, right? Bump, set, spike. So if we're doing our own study and we're reading the script, that's kind of the bump. And I feel like that moment before is the set, because if you want to spike this objective and if you really want to make an impact in your performance, you have to properly set it up. And another thing that Bev said, which I've used the channel flipping analogy before myself, if you don't love it in the first 10 to 15 seconds, you're not going to keep watching to hope it gets better. So your emotional pre-life, your moment before, is going to help you drive in to that scene where your first 10 to 15 seconds are already moving. Like, we don't want to wait for you to go from 0 to 30 or from 0 to 60. We want you to come in at 30 miles an hour or at 60 miles an hour, or whatever the script indicates. And that's going to help set up your spike. And I feel like what your objective, what you're talking about, is when you're really going to drive it home. But I think if we don't set ourselves up correctly, then we miss the chance. And we may have a casting director shut the video off before we even get to that objective because we didn't set it up properly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the objective can then drive what you want. And you can break it down to a basic level. You can start with just, I want this money. You're trying to get money. But then you can break it down to, even more. Why do you want the money? Well, I gotta pay this bill. Okay, why does that matter? Well, if I don't, then my power will get turned off. Why does that matter? Well, then my family's gonna think I'm a loser. Well, why does that matter? Then I've let down. I've not done my job as a man, as a husband, as a father. You know what I'm saying? You can break that down a little bit more, but you got to have a what do you want, and then or some people might call them actions. That's like, what are you going to do to get what you want, to achieve your want? So if you're going back to that little example I just made up, money, you can try to intimidate the person to give you money. You can try to beg, you can plead, you can try to relate to them, find common ground. You can try to schmooze them, charm them. there's a bunch of different ways you could go about that. All right. Now, some people would say, some I know acting coaches and different studios will say that you can go so far as to have a different tactic for every line or every beat. I don't know that that's necessary, but I do know it's pretty consistent that a lot of casting directors and directors will like to see at least having maybe a few within a scene, so the scene doesn't just stay on the same note the whole time. Because that happens in real life in conversations. We're talking to people, especially if we're trying to get a point across or get something from them that we want, and it's not really going as we planned. You can retreat a little bit and try to appeal to humor and lighthearted. You can kind of dial in and go after them a little bit more, be a little bit more firm. You can try to be understanding and sensitive, and then you can bag at the, you know what I mean? There could be different moments within the conversation that are all still honoring the intention of the script and all still falling under the same objective. But it'll have levels and layers to it. So I do think that it's nice to at least, even in the shortest scenes, at least have one shift. And that's coming up in here in a minute. I guess I'll go ahead and do it. Some scenes have specific turns and shifts in them. You start one way, new information is introduced, something happens, something you think about, and then there's a turn and a shift. Sometimes it's very, very obvious, but even where it's not obvious, it's nice to introduce a little bit of a little shift or sway. And sometimes the tactic is the way to do that, especially if it's a really short scene and you're just there as a supporting character serving someone else. You're not there to make the whole scene about you, but it can still be nice to have a little bit of a shift in tactic there. But that was the next point, is you definitely have to identify the turns, the shifts, or the beat changes. So if that is indicated in the script in any way, by what people say, by the stage direction, by it says beat, identify that, recognize that as they're probably for a reason. I mean, they wrote it that way. That means that's what the writer is intending and wanting. So you've got to identify those. You can't miss those. If there's can you give an example of shifting? Well, there's that scene. Laura, did you get that scene I sent?
I did.
Can you share that with everybody? Is that possible?
Well, let me send it to myself on my computer because it's on my phone, but let me send it to my computer real quick.
Okay. So I'm going to send out a scene that I wrote for one of the classes I teach, and we can use that as an example for shift. But an example for a shift. Let's see. So I did a scene last night. I did a taped audition last night, and I only had 2 lines. The other 2 people in the scene had several lines. I was reacting to them mostly. I had flowers in my hands and I was giving them to this lady, and this guy was like, "Are there flowers for her?" And I said, yeah, yes, they are. And they gave her the flowers. Okay. And then the second line was, "Of course." They go back and forth, and she says, "Can I have a moment?" I say, "Of course." So there wasn't a giant shift in the vibe of the scene or what was going on between those 2, but I didn't want necessarily both of them to come from the exact same place. So all it looked like I could do was just this one thing. I'm getting a little bit down in the weeds with more advanced stuff, but so I just wanted there to be a little bit of a shift from one to the other. Meaning, like, maybe I'm more excited about giving her the flowers, and I'm still hopeful and pursuing her, and I'm not paying as much attention to the other guy. But then when she asked to step away and for me to give them a minute to go talk off privately, well, then maybe I'm a little bit more concerned or deflated or defeated. Not overly so, not like I'm totally crushed and tail between my legs, but there could be a little bit of a shift there. I'm like, oh, well, now she's stepping away from me and has to go talk to this other guy privately and just leave me standing here. Does that make sense as far as a little shift that I was just trying to introduce? But again, a lot of scenes, they're very, very specific, again, where new information is introduced to the character via what's happening in the world or what's happening in between them in a dialogue. Or you're on a phone call and you get information from the other person. Or, y'all are watching your if you ever saw the movie Signs, when Joaquin Phoenix is watching the news and the alien walks across, even though they kind of know what's going on, I mean, that's a little bit of a shift of a turn when they actually saw the body of the alien walk across. So yeah, you need to look out for those. What do we have next? Obstacles. I think obstacles are pretty self-explanatory and they're pretty obvious, but you may want to, identify those. An obstacle is something that gets in the way of your want, something that gets in the way of your objective. I guess it's important to identify, and it may sound like just it's dummy, but it may not be as implicit. In other words, the person it might be something like, well, I really wanted to go to the party. And then the other person said, well, Jeremy called. Okay, well, it might be, it might not be explicit, it might be implicit. So if you're reading that scene and all of a sudden there's a little bit of a shift there, well, crap, what are we going to do now? Okay, you see what I'm saying? Like, normally Jeremy calling, that there's nothing explicit about that being bad or can't go to the party. But the conversation, I was going to go to the party, Jeremy called, oh crap, what are we going to do now? Okay, that is an obstacle. So I need to identify it as such so I know how I feel. What does that mean to me? How do I connect to it? Joe, as an actor, how do I connect to that information? But Jeremy called. That's the equivalent of. That's why I guess it's important to identify the obstacles. I think we naturally do that, but that's just another thing to consider. I told you we're going to get into a whole lot of it's sounding like it's insanely complicated. But the more you do this, the more this just happens. It doesn't take as long as it sounds. You kind of do this second nature after you do it for a while. Triggers. Identify triggers. Triggers are actions or dialogue that demand attention. Again, that example Jeremy called. If that shifts my pursuit to something else, then it demands my attention. It can be lots of different things. What's the one thing you have to, if someone in the scene says, stop, don't raise your voice with me, that means your line before had probably have a raised voice. Or unless the next line is like, I didn't raise my voice with you. What are you talking about, crazy person? But you see what I'm saying? If they said that, or get out of my face. Well, that means you're pursuing. You see what I'm saying? There's different things that demand your attention in there if they're said. It's like interrupting, right? You can't be interrupted if no one interrupts you. Well, you gotta figure those things out. If it's got the word and then the dash, that means the next line is interrupting. You gotta figure that stuff out so that you have that moment that demand your attention.
And actors,
does that make sense?
Please, if you're working with other scene partners and if you have a reader and they provide for you a line that has those dashes after it, jump on it. Please, because if you don't, it leaves the previous line, the actor, stuck in this holding position that they were never meant to be stuck in. And it creates a very awkward space and the energy drops immediately, because what was supposed to happen is, they were supposed to say this and you immediately came down. And if you don't, it just really, it really drops the energy of the scene in a really big way. So please don't underestimate. Look for any of those interruptions, either you being interrupted, and be prepared to be interrupted early. If you are, just stop. If you're not, or fit it in. If you are not interrupted, figure out a way to play that until that person jumps into your line, because it happens way more than it should, I feel like.
Yeah, and if you feel like you've got a reader that just is not getting in or not help, because I know you got to get readers. Sometimes you got to get readers that, well, a lot of times I have to get readers that aren't actors. I have to do what I got to do to get to meet the deadline or beat the deadline hopefully by a lot. But there are different ways you can do that. You can kind of trail off, or like you're thinking, or like considering, or there's different things you can do. But yeah, like Laura said, it's going to look real awkward if you just are planning for that and you're like, happens. So you either have to find a way to slow it down or trail off or like get lost in your thought or reconsider or catch yourself giving them time to do that, or they have to jump on it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So move it right along. I love creating as ifs. Does everyone know what an as if is? I can't see everybody, so I'm just gonna keep talking as if you don't. But this is one of my my favorite tools. Some people don't like them as much. Some people say they don't need them. I love them. So if I've done a quick breakdown of the scene, I've broken down the what's going on, the behaviors there, the dynamics of the relationship. You know, if I've named the scene, you know, if it's like if it's a boss worker scene, it's like authority, you know, a person of authority. I'm the submissive person in this situation. I have to take orders or listen or be submissive in some way. You know, I'm just spitballing here, but if I've broken that kind of down, that relationship dynamic, I mean, and that can be boss employee, that can be even within family dynamics sometimes, given the scene, that can be like a military thing. That can be lots of different scenarios where you have a person kind of in authority. It can be of a person in religious authority. It can be lots of different things. But if I've narrowed the essence down, okay, they're in more of an authority. I've got to be submissive to them, whether or not I want to. That's a whole side issue. What I can then do, me, Joe, the actor, come up with is, okay, what is the scenario in my life, in my mind, that I can relate to, that's shaved close to reality, that I can buy, I can believe, and I can get lost in my imagination, whereby I would be needing to be more submissive to this person in the authority, and it could be a bunch of different things. I mean, hey, I could just go with what I do. I'm an actor, so if I have a director, if I have say I have a well-known, established director who's very talented, okay, I'm in submission. That's my job. I'm listening intently. I want to hear what they have to say. They tell me to do something, I want to do it. I want to figure out how to bring that about. Okay, so I could have a quick little as if. Okay, it's as if I'm, I'm on a good old Dallas Jenkins. He's a very talented man, the old Chosen director. If I'm on set with Dallas, he's been doing this for a long time. I want to listen. I want to hear. I want to be intent. He gives me something to do. Yes, sir. And so I can have a quick little as if, and I can just interact with the person in the scene as if Joe is on set with Dallas, and I want to do what he says. So that is just a random little one I just pulled out of the air, but there's a million different ways you can do that, and there's all particular to you. I can also, even within that as if, like I don't know Dallas, I've never worked with him. I can just kind of imagine that scenario and I can buy it and I can kind of fall into it. But what I can also do is use people that I do know. You get a little more tricky here, a little more. I would caution you to use the old like emotional kind of recall or memory recall. I wouldn't go back and use traumatic events from your own life, and I'd be real careful with the relationships that you do use. But there's a lot of relationships I can just quickly drop in. You know, I have a brother, I have a brother-in-law, there's people I've mentored, I have a daughter, I have a wife. So if it's not going to be some sort of traumatic psychological thing, I can just see my scene partner through the lens of whoever. If it's a relationship dynamic that's like father and daughter, even if it's not father and daughter, but it's like that within that scene, I can just react and see the other person as my daughter Ella. Okay, I can come up with a quick little as if. They're Ella. It's as if, she's had a tough day at school, and even though she's not doing her chores, she had a hard day, and so I'm trying to get her to do something, but I'm being patient with her. And so boom, that's just a quick little thing I came up with, and that's how I interact with them. So when you get good at that, the sky's the limit. There's a million possibilities, and you can switch it really quick. So if you get redirected, either in like a callback or on set, you can just quickly change. You can change the as if altogether, or you can just change some details of the as if, or just change the person, the same scenario. But instead of me trying to get my daughter to do something I want her to do, she's had a tough day. It's my brother-in-law who's a grown man, so I might be less delicate and a little bit more gruff. Still the same kind of scenario though. So I love the as ifs. I hope that made sense, and we're going to answer some questions here in just a minute.
I'll go ahead and mention that for some people, this is one of those where we don't disagree real often. But I will say for myself, I have actually used some traumatic experiences, and it was a super healing process for me, because I had a character who, needed, the director literally told me, okay, think back to a moment where you, like, life suddenly stopped and there was nothing you could do. Everything was broken and you could do nothing to fix it. And so my mind immediately went back to my first miscarriage. And so that was super traumatic for me, but it immediately put me in that place. And then after that scene wrapped, I actually felt a healing because I hadn't ever been able to just, like in that moment, it had purpose because I was like, oh my goodness, that little baby child was with me. Like they got to do this movie scene with me. They were a part of it. And it did this weird thing in my mind. So definitely know your own mind, know your own boundaries. But I will say that some things that I've been able to use, those painful experiences, God used those roles just for me. I'm not speaking for anyone else, but for me, He gave a purpose. And of course, His purposes are so wildly complicated that of course God is always doing a million things at once. But for me personally, there have been a couple of times now when I was able to go back, and as I played that out, it helped me process it in a way I never had before. And I looked back on it differently from that moment on because I was like, hey, we did that together. And it was such a cool healing moment for me. So I just wanted to throw that out there for some of you. Most of you will probably be like Joseph. Maybe I'm kind of weird that way, but for me, it worked. And it was a very healing experience.
Yeah, well, I completely agree that it works. It definitely works. I've done it in the past. The problem is, you just got to be careful because I've talked with psychiatrists and psychologists, and some of these tactics that we use to get into those spaces are the exact same tactics they'll use in therapy to access trauma and work through trauma. So if you honest self-evaluation, this is my opinion, honest self-evaluation is one of the hardest things in the world to do. That's, the Bible talks about your heart being deceitful, right? You're supposed to preach to your heart, not let your heart lead you or follow your heart. But both pride and desires, that's where sin comes from too, our own lust and our own desires. We have to just be really, 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 really careful. And I know a lot of people may think they're okay with things or think they've worked through them, but they're not as in a healthy a place as you are, Laura. So that's why I always give that caveat, that warning, that disclaimer, because you do have to be careful, and those things will potentially, I know with me, they can sit with you for a long time. You can't just always come right out of it, especially if you don't have a methodology to systematically kind of come out of it. And then what it can do is psychologically it can affect your relationships, how you view people. It can affect how you interact with people, how you then treat the next person. Yeah, spiritual check big time. Treat the next person you interact with, how you treat your family when you go back home. So there's a lot. I just want to be careful with saying to do that. It can absolutely work. But the other potential downfall of it is that it also will ultimately dry up. So even if you try to use that again, there's only a limited amount of time before it doesn't really affect you the same way anyway. So if you rely on those kind of things, you're limited in a couple of regards. One, how many times you can use it, because you might try to use it a few times and then it just doesn't hit you. You're still sad, it still affects you, but not with the same gravity. And then two, if you, which I know Laura's not saying this, but if you were to kind of really rely on that kind of stuff, you're limited to your past experiences. So what if you're given a script that doesn't line up with an experience you've had that you can pull from? So you've got to get creative ultimately. Especially if what if you get it with a director that you got to do the scene 100 times. So even if you go in with a past experience that works perfectly, after 20, 30, 40 takes, it's not hitting you the same anymore. You're going to have to get creative and be able to create a lot of stuff to continue to do that scene fresh and new and live and powerfully, even in that one day on set potentially, let alone the next project and the next project. But anyway, okay, let's see what we got in the comments / question section. I see a lot of comments popping up there, but I'm on my phone, so I can't really see what those are. I don't know how to get those comments. Laura, are there any good questions you got there you want to throw out
All right, let me
or
go back.
comments?
Um, well, so there was a question that had been submitted earlier, and it was
Uh-huh.
about being able to compare for are there any examples of an audition? And I actually get this question a lot, so I have an auto response that I give to folks, but I would love to hear if you have anything else to add. Are there any examples of auditions that had strong bold choices made where all the auditioners, the rest of them all did the same thing? Like, what would you say if somebody asked you that?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I mean, I've helped cast a few things like through Actors Access, and it's funny when I think, again, take this with a grain of salt, but it seems to me that a lot of times when people try to get it right, they're just trying to just get it right. I'm not saying honoring the intention of the script, because I do think you ought to do that. But when you're just trying to uh, get it right and do what you think they want to seen, then what will happen is from the casting director's side of it, you'll have 100 auditions where the face will change, the features and the skin tone and the voice, but the audition will be virtually the exact same. But then you have someone who's trying to really connect to it personally and think a little bit outside of the box and what are some different options to approach this, how I connect to it. This still honors the intention of the script, but it brings me to the table instead of how do I make myself be exactly what they want to see? Then it's refreshing and it's new and it's different and it stands out. Does that answer the question? And do you agree, Laura?
Yeah. I actually we do CC monologue challenges in the Christian casting group. It's been a long time since I posted one, but part of the reason that I encourage folks to do it and to watch other people's tapes is because we never get to see behind the curtain. We don't get to see who would have gotten picked and why. And these monologue challenges, if you have 5 or 10 or 15 different people submitting little YouTube clips for the very same little bitty monologue, you can see different choices. And I remember in particular one where this gal came on smacking her gum, which normally I would never ever recommend that anyone do in a self tape. But the nature of the character was a little sassy, and so she just went for it. And her tape was so wildly refreshing and different than everybody else's because it fit. It fit her character. But normally we'd be like, well, we can't, we could never smack gum on tape, and you shouldn't normally. But
Hmm.
in this moment, because it was so authentic to the character, it separated her tape. That and her performance was brilliant, so it separated her tape from the rest of them in a landslide. And Laura had asked if you could talk about maybe some other bold choices, maybe examples of times you've made bold choices or what bold choices you've seen.
Sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure at least one thing comes to mind immediately. This TV show I did, Drop Dead Diva, where I was just on a witness stand. I was like a bartender that was providing a testimony on the witness stand about this lady. Um, and I took a big swing with it in that I just decided it wasn't on the page, but I was like, well, what if we kind of have this flirtatious relationship, and I know her, and I've been kind of complimenting her and kind of hitting on her a little bit, and I'm very fond of her, instead of just what was on the page. And I got booked for it, and it was funny is when I got there, I was thinking, well, it must be because I tried this crazy thing and did this that wasn't on the page at all. Um, but I asked the director, I was like, do you want me to do what I did in the audition? And they're like, no, 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 just do it plain, just do it, just straight man, just say the words. So it was kind of like what Laura was saying with Beverly and the second take thing. It was like, show him that you can, at least show him that you can, that you're just not cookie cutter. I mean, you've got ability to play and do different things, whether or not um, they want to actually do that for the take on camera. Um, and I'm a big fan of that, Laura. I've done that a bunch, even when not asked. I've even made up a scene before. There was one independent film I did where I did label them accordingly. They separate them on Actors Access, so if they don't want to see them, they don't have to. But I even was like, "Hey, I just made up this scene because I can see it happening down the road with these two characters," and I improvised a scene that I just made up, and I ended up booking that role in that film. Um, but yeah, I love if I can, like you said, if I can do an interesting swing that's clearly different from the other take,
Mhm.
And also lives in that world somewhere. That's not like a big, forget you to the script, but can potentially live in that world. Then I love doing that option.
Okay. Next question. What do you or what do CDs look for in terms of acting training? And I can answer that in one word: consistency. I don't need to see that you study with the latest and the greatest and the most expensive teacher. I want to see that you're consistently training.
There you go. Laura's done a lot more casting than I have. So,
All right.
um,
So Barbara says we all have the same basic emotions available to us. Taking those and appropriating the ones that fit the character you have that allows your character to live, then without damaging you personally, because the character you create is the one living inside of them. Good thoughts. All right. The word bold. Okay. So yes, this is an important note for those who are newer. More experienced folks like Laura are going to say, wait, make sure people know. And this is so good. Bold does not mean louder and bigger. Bold means brave. And it can be a brave choice because it's not the one that you think everybody, it's not the auto response. Bold can even be a very quiet, like you choose to barely whisper but your audio is good so they can hear your lines, but you choose to barely be able to get the words out in your tape, when before people were just speaking and they were sad and everyone was sad, but we could hear your breathing, we can hear that gasp of a whisper. That can be a bold choice, actually quieting things down. But it does just have to be honest. It has to be authentic to that character and to the scene and the goals of that scene. So, oh, Brad Robert said range. Range is so important. Yes, yes, yes. And whenever I work with folks on auditions, I tell them, make sure your tape goes somewhere. If you can't see like 3 different shifts because anytime, if we're happy, we're not just happy. We're either happy and anticipating something, or we're happy because something good just happened, or we're happy because we just ate a really good meal that we like. Those are all very different happies. So I try to tell people, try to identify at least like a 1, 2, 3, an A, B, and a C in your self tape. And maybe you can make it work and maybe you can't, but at least then you're trying to force some variation. Well, at the beginning, I'm going to be happy and thoughtful. And then I'm going to be happy and excited. And then I'm going to be happy and reflective. Like if you take us on those ebbs and flows, take us on a journey, because flatlining in the medical field means you're dead. And typically in auditions, it's the same thing. Even if you're at a really great emotion and it's super powerful, but you never ever venture out of that flat line, I'm going to be really disappointed by the end of your tape.
yeah,
So,
just to piggyback on that, I think there's a lot of semantics involved, with how you articulate things and how people connect to different words. And I think we have to be careful. Most people, maybe not everyone, most people that I've come in contact with, I think we need to be cautious of playing an end result, playing an emotion, or pushing for an end thing, because again, in real life, you are presented with relationships and circumstances. And yes, you have behaviors, you have goals and objectives, but you typically don't enter into a conversation with a end goal emotional state that you're pushing towards achieving. Um, you know what I mean? So I think some people might not think of it that way, and that's fine. But I think we need to be careful about it, depending how you. I think it can look. It can look potentially not always, but it can potentially be put on or shallow or manifested, or like a facade, if you're trying to be a thing or be generic with whatever. You can still have, if we identify, I want to go to the party, but Jeremy called. If you already identified what it means, who Jeremy is and what that means, you can change that, and that will elicit a response in you in the moment within the scene, without saying, I'm going to be happy when Jeremy calls, or I'm going to be this
mhm.
when Jeremy calls. But again, sometimes that's just semantic. Sometimes it doesn't matter from person to person, but I think it does matter with some people, because then we can get caught up in the being of the thing, and we're not listening, and we're not reacting, and it can be more put on instead of just generated. But anyway, that's a little bit of a sidebar. Do we have any more? I think we can get one more in here. Comments or questions?
Brad just indicated that it's important to tell a story, and I think that's absolutely true.
I took my mic off so I could ask or say.
Sure.
Okay. In terms of what Joseph was just saying about the emotional goals in a scene, if you have created your character and they are really a human being, not just a caricature, and you are in a scene and things happen in that scene, then your character is going to respond automatically. It's just going to happen if you've made your character real. So you don't have to plot the emotions. You have to make the character a real person. That real person will feel the appropriate emotions in the scene.
I agree.
Absolutely true.
Yeah,
And I will offer a disclaimer. I think that probably Joseph works with a lot more advanced performers. I tend to work with a lot of beginner performers. So it's sort of like the mechanics. Like I'm trying to tell them, like, this is how it's supposed to look when you do this. So we break that down, and then we do work on the transitions to get that natural ebb and flow. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Barbara, that once you've created that character, that is naturally what happens. I'm just trying to spell out like the CAT. Once you can read, that's going to be cat, and it's going to be automatic. But for now, C says K, A says A, T says T. And so whenever we talk, I love, Joseph, that you kind of put things in a little more like, all right, y'all, if you're not a beginner, I'm here to talk to you. And then I'm like, and if you are a beginner, here's my intake, or here's my input. So I love that we can bounce that off of each other. So disclaimer, I do work with tons of folks who literally come to me and say, hey, I've never been in a movie. I want to be, can you help? So yes, it is absolutely a process that should automatically happen.
Right. And it stems from the character, as Joseph was saying in the very beginning, you're looking at the scene, you're figuring out what's going on, you read it through, you get a feel for it, and then you start deciding things, very specific things for your character. Those are the basic building steps that he talked about in the beginning. And when you do that, and you keep doing that, then you get a real person eventually with practice. And then the emotions become attached to whatever's going on around them. It's what happens to us in our life. It's what will happen to the character you create in their life.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah, and I would say just the last little button, if I may, to put on that. Again, I know this is not the only way, but what I've found to be most effective and what I've seen in a lot of the actors that I think are fantastic is it's that whole, this is gonna sound cheesy. I know you heard it before, but the character's not out there, it's here. So even if the character is much different than you, it's a winnowing away or a narrowing down of certain attributes of you that can connect with that character. Breaking down, even if you have to go way back psychologically and behaviorally, obviously if you're playing a murderer, you're not a murderer, you're not going to convince yourself you're a murderer, you're not going to want to entertain the thoughts of murdering someone, but you can analyze within that scene when they're speaking of this thing or doing this thing, what are the behaviors and what are the root interactions, perspectives of that. And then you as the person, as the actor Joe, I can find an as if or find a connection with the root behavior. So even though I'm saying the words of I want to kill you, I don't have to necessarily be thinking that. Or I'm going about doing this action, I can see it as something different in my mind, so that it is still me. So I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. I'm just focused, narrowing in on a certain part of me, a certain aspect of me, or a certain desire of mine that I can justify in what I've created. And then, like you said, then you can be moved in the moment to moment within the scene, because it is you and you're not trying to be someone else that you're not. You're just focusing on a very specific aspect.
All right. I know we're a couple minutes after, Joseph, but this last question is definitely worth asking. So give me, let's say somebody handed you sides right now. It's like, Joseph, you got to submit it tonight. Laura has an awesome question. Explain a process if you have to scene breakdown quickly for a short deadline. What would you do? And go.
Okay. Back what I said at the beginning. What was it? How do I feel about the situation? Who are the other people? How do I feel about the other person? Okay. So I mean,
Awesome.
quick little bit. What's the situation? What's going on? How do I feel about that? It's my perspective. Who is the other person to me?
Awesome.
And let those two collide. I think that's the essence of every. Now it's a little different than an audition versus on set, because on set you can have set props, set dressing, things you can interact with another actor who's into it, hopefully. I mean, on all that, and it's a very sterile environment in an audition, and a reader who may or may not be into it or be giving you much. But that's just kind of the essence of every scene. What's going on with you in your perspective? What's going on with the other person? What happens when the two collide?
Awesome. And then do you have a favorite acting book?
I got a few right over here. Right now I'm reading Harold Guskin, How to Stop Acting. Interesting, very interesting.
Nice.
Stand by. Michael Caine, can you hear me? Michael Caine, Acting in Film. That was decent. No acting, please. Eric something around there.
And if y'all are going to be here tomorrow, we are back tomorrow, same time, same channel. And we'll be live with you guys from 3 to 4 tomorrow as well. All right. Brad recommends Uta Hagen. I actually have this one, Respect for Acting.
Yeah.
Another very good one.
There's so many.
I love Stella Adler.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it has
Okay.
been awesome. And I know, Joseph, you need to get going. I actually teach a kids class at 4:30. So I got to get going. But thank you guys. And tomorrow, if you can come back, Joseph actually does private coaching as well. So I would love to give you guys that info, unless you can spit it out real quick, Joseph, and then we can do it again tomorrow. How can they get in touch with you? Well, for the sake of the replay, you might not want to say your email out loud, but do you have a website they can go to?
Yes, josephgray.net. And there's no advertisements there for coaching on there. And I really need to update it. So don't judge me, people. But I think I think my contact information. Yeah, my email's online.
Okay,
anyway.
I'll tell you what.
actorjosephgray@gmail.com.
If you have been so encouraged and you're like, I want to consider a session with this guy, email me, Laura@christiancasting.com, and I will absolutely forward your information on to him. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Joseph, always for your time. And we will see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place, for part 2.
See you tomorrow.
See ya.
See you, Joseph.